because it's the one thing that over the past couple of days has been really weird. And I don't even know where these conversations came from. It's the strangest stuff I have seen in a while. And, this whole political scene since 2016 has been really, really strange. But we're going to talk about this Kamala Harris dropped out of the race because of racism and sexism foolishness, because that stuff is foolishness. But we're going to give you all a couple of minutes to grab your friends, start a watch party, share the video, invite some people, get comfortable, get a snack, get a drink. I have mine, got my drink. So we can get comfortable and talk about these issues. Before we get into this, I want to remind you, if you did not watch our quick live stream last night, our big news, if you don't know, Luqman Nation will be officially joining the crew of By Any Means Necessary on Sputnik Radio starting tomorrow. You can listen to us from 2 to 4 p.m. every weekday from, I said 2 to 4 p.m. on 105.5 FM in Washington, D.C., in the D.C. area. And you can listen live online at SputnikNews.com, I think it is. Or you can watch the live hour from 3 to 4 p.m., which is live streamed on Facebook, on the By Any Means Necessary Facebook page and on the Sputnik Facebook page. And yes, it's going to be on the Luqman Nation Facebook page too. We moving on up, y'all. I'm so excited. All day long, I have been like almost comatose in a vegetative state because I cannot believe this has happened to us. But thank y'all for your support up to this point. Thank y'all so much for your faithfulness and your support and standing by your girl and your boy, and we really appreciate y'all. So let's get into this, because let me show you something. If you haven't seen what has been going on in the media since Kamala Harris dropped out of the race for the Democratic Party nomination out of the primary race, let me show you some of the crazy stuff that has been published, or that is being published, about why Kamala Harris dropped out. Let's see if we can get this pulled up for you. Yes, here we go. In The Independent this past week, they decided to publish this thing that said Kamala Harris is a cop was a racist narrative that killed Harris's campaign dead. And whatever you think about her, it's deeply unfair. Aside from the fact that Kamala called herself the top cop, I don't even want to look at her. I don't even want to look at her. Let me close that. Aside from the fact that she called herself the top cop in California, here's the problem with this woman's campaign. One of the problems with her campaign. And it's the problem that the way her campaign was framed in the media, how she was sold to us. That didn't sound right. That sounded really messed up. No, not sold to us. How her campaign was sold to us as the vehicle that's going to deliver the black vote to the DNC and usher the Democrats to victory over Trump in 2020. Ooh, I just committed a terrible faux pas right there. My bad. So this is one of the problems with Kamala Harris's campaign. When her campaign began, many political pundits referred to her as quote-unquote Trump's nightmare. First of all, right there, there is no politician, there's no Democratic politician, except for maybe one, perhaps two, who Trump is actually deeply concerned about. Kamala Harris ain't never been one of those politicians. And let me tell you why. It's in the next few sentences in this paragraph. Some even went as far as to call her the next Obama. That ought to be a hint for you. Or to compare her to Shirley Chisholm, which I thought was insulting. You can't compare any black woman politician to Shirley Chisholm just because she's a black woman politician. No, don't do that. Here is why Kamala Harris was never a threat to Trump. She was a woman of color with moderate policies. Moderate policies. And all the makings of someone who could have broad appeal. The reason, y'all, that Kamala Harris's campaign and her candidacy was never a threat to Donald Trump is because moderate policies are not going to beat Donald Trump. Even Donald Trump knows that. As little about actual politics and policies that man actually knows. And trust me, he does not know a lot. He knows that centrist, moderate Democrats, corporate establishment Democrats, Democrats with moderate policies are not going to defeat him. He knows that. How does he know that? Because he was that outsider Republican who beat out all of the moderate establishment corporate Republicans who should have wiped the floor with that man. But they couldn't, because the Republican base didn't want more Republican moderate policies. The Democratic base, even a large bulk of the base, doesn't want continued moderate Democratic policies. People want relief for the pain that they are suffering. And moderate Democratic policies are not going to get that. They're not going to fix that. Yeah, there's a very vocal Democratic base that is very liberal and very much vote blue no matter who. And they would have been fine with Kamala Harris as the nominee. And then they would have blamed Bernie supporters and third-party voters for when she lost. Exactly like they did. Because they go right along with the Democratic Party, not wanting this leftward shift of the party that these crazy progressives under Sanders and ostensibly Warren, that's another conversation, that these crazy progressives are trying to force the Democratic Party into, when in reality, Sanders and Warren and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley, these women are not pushing the Democratic Party. These politicians, these progressive politicians, aren't pushing the Democratic Party to the left. They're pushing the Democratic Party away from the right that they have firmly ensconced themselves in. And that was the problem with Kamala Harris. She was a result. Her policies in California as the prosecutor, the California state prosecutor, were a result of that rightward tough on crime shift. See, when people, especially black people, found out that in California, Kamala Harris had evidence that people who were on death row were innocent, there was evidence to prove that they were innocent, and she just decided, well, they're going to have to stay on death row anyway. I'm not letting them out. Oh, she gave some ridiculous procedural answer for doing that, but there is no justification for keeping innocent people in prison. There really is none. When people, especially black people, found out that Kamala Harris joked and laughed about locking up mothers, parents, mostly black women, because their children were truant, knowing full well that these parents needed help with things like employment, housing, childcare, health care. And that was the reason that their children were truant. They needed help in other areas, but she made a joke to an audience full of rich white people about her policy locking up mostly black mothers for their truant kids. When people saw that video, people didn't look at Kamala Harris as, oh, she's saying about her, Kamala is a cop, trying to make a racist or sexist jab at her. They talked about her like that, number one, because she called herself a cop. She said she was the top cop. And number two, because her policies were completely in line with the pro-police carceral state that indiscriminately and unjustly punishes predominantly black and poor people. She was a part of that system. She was the head of that system. And she used that system against black and brown and poor people in California. When people found that out, they were like, oh, snap, she is a cop. That's not racist, that's the truth. And finally, a couple of days later, another op-ed is published in the same newspaper, The Independent, saying exactly that about Kamala's record. Here's the other article. I think this is so funny that it's published, it's two opposing op-eds published in the same paper that it's just ridiculous. It's just hilarious. If you think calling Kamala Harris a cop was racist, you need to talk to black feminists. And this article was posted 3 days ago, and it contains a quote that I use frequently when I talk about black politicians and why black people need to criticize black politicians' policies very carefully. All your skin folk ain't your kinfolk. All skin folk ain't kinfolk, y'all. Just because a politician is black, it does not mean that their policies reflect the consciousness that is required to deliver justice and to protect black people from this system. So yeah, you can be black and be in this system and be just as much as a cop, as a white Republican with their tough on crime policies. It's no different. It's not different because Kamala Harris is black. And it's not different because Kamala is a woman. Her ovaries don't make her policies any less destructive and dangerous and damaging. And if they were dangerous and damaging on a state level in California, what do you think they were going to be on a national level? That's why her poll numbers plummeted. Not because we were racist and she was sexist. So let's see what else is said in this article about Kamala Harris. The saying about kinfolk, or better yet, the sound of my grandmother's voice reciting it to me over the seep of her chewing tobacco, rings loud when thinking about how the now former presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Moreover, the need to reinforce these words proved persistently necessary this week when a number of people claimed that she had been the victim of identity-based discrimination through the apparently racist Kamala is a cop narrative, which contributed to her declining popularity. Now, to be certain, Kamala Harris faces obstacles of oppression and perception as a black woman. Few would argue against this. That's true. I'm sure there were people who said some racist and sexist things about her. Yes, that is true. But it's still true that at the same time, however, to put it into her own words, Kamala is California's top cop. And the article goes on to talk about all of the issues, well, most of the issues with her record that she could not explain, she couldn't defend, she did lousy in defending a record that honestly is indefensible when it's held up under the light of scrutiny, especially when it's held up under the light of the scrutiny of black Twitter and black social media. Come on. We're talking about electing a person who will be the top policymaker for the entire nation, making policies that are going to affect black people. If this woman could not make policies as in regard to criminal justice that were not harmful to black people in California, why would we trust her with even more power over all the black people in this country? We ain't doing that again. A whole lot of us ain't doing that again. Our dog is an unhappy camper over there. So just ignore the whining. Brewski is over there upset. But he's saying hello. Let's just pretend that he's saying hi. Because I'm telling him to stay over there and not come around here. So you've got people, and there are some black people who are blaming white progressives for tanking Kamala Harris's campaign. Listen, anybody who wants to run for president should run for president. I don't have a problem with everybody running for president. Go right ahead, so we can weed all of the crazy people out. That's what a primary is. That's what a primary is for. You weed the unqualified, invalid candidates out. You listen to their proposals, their platforms, you decide which ones are ridiculous, you decide which people are absolutely inappropriate and unqualified for the office, you get rid of them, you eliminate them through rounds of debates, and then you get down to the final 2, 3, and then you vote for which one you want to be the representative of your party in the general election. That's what a primary is. You vet a candidate's record. You vet their proposals. You vet their policies. That's how it works. Now, there were things that were said about her, like her likability, and, people were questioning how black she was. Now, that crap was, that was beyond the pale. That was racist and sexist. Okay, that, I'll buy that. But that actually was not as widespread as people make it out to be. Kamala Harris's campaign did not fail because people questioned her blackness. No, once people saw that she went on once black people in particular, I keep needing to make that point clear, once black people in particular saw when she went on the Breakfast Club and tried to pander to black people, talking about how she smoked weed in college and she was listening to Tupac while she was smoking weed, and Tupac ain't even put out no music when she was in college at the time. It's like you're going to pander to black people. I think by then she had already done the picture at Sylvia's in New York with the picture of hot sauce, putting hot sauce on her greens or something like that. And black folks were already tired of the candidates talking about hot sauce all the time and greens. All of us don't eat hot sauce and greens. And honestly, if politicians keep believing that they are going to endear themselves to black people who they want to vote for them by taking pictures with a plate of greens and a bottle of hot sauce next to them, then they don't deserve for us to vote for them at all. I don't care who they are. That kind of pandering needs to die. Anybody on anybody's campaign who continues to give politicians that kind of advice, that they need to go to Sylvia's or some soul food restaurant and be pictured around some black people eating some black food the way black people would eat it, that you immediately need to lose every black vote. So black people were already annoyed with that. And then here she comes on the Breakfast Club with that silly comment that she didn't have to make. It was a lie she didn't have to tell. It was a truth she didn't have to stretch. And then people are falling over themselves trying to explain why, well, maybe she could have been right, because maybe Tupac put out a mixtape. And it's like, y'all, come on. The woman is trying too hard to be one of the girls. She was trying too hard to identify with people that she really doesn't identify with. And this is where I believe the racism really did come in Kamala Harris's campaign. It wasn't the criticism of her policies. That wasn't racist. The sexism didn't come in with, calling her, a cop. Somebody mentioned, well, Amy Klobuchar was a prosecutor and nobody called Amy Klobuchar a cop. Nobody said Amy is a cop. Well, okay, first of all, Amy Klobuchar has never done as well in the polls as Kamala Harris has. Amy Klobuchar was never in the top 5 of the candidates. Amy as a cop is not as catchy as Kamala is a cop. That's a terrible clapback slogan. Amy is a cop. That doesn't have a zing to it. And honestly, Amy Klobuchar was not touted by the DNC as the candidate to deliver the black vote or the woman vote. Do you understand what I'm saying? To me, comparing the treatment of Amy Klobuchar to Kamala Harris is not equal in this regard, because Amy Klobuchar was not touted as the woman who's going to deliver the woman vote for the DNC. But Kamala Harris was heralded as the candidate who's going to deliver the black woman vote to the DNC. And that's a problem. Because, and we believe that's racist. We believe that's where the racism actually is. Because we believe it's a serious problem when we have already established through, I mean, if you weren't aware before 2016, if you didn't get it during Obama's 2 terms, the Democratic Party really does take the black vote for granted. That is true. It doesn't make it untrue that Republicans say it. It doesn't make that untrue that crazy people like Kanye West and Candace Owens and these Dem Exit people who think that black people are going to not vote for the Democrats and then jump into the Republican Party. Just because those crazy people say that the Democrats take the black vote for granted, it doesn't mean that it's actually not true. It is. It's very true. And a lot of black people have become aware of this. And this is why many more black people are becoming very, very cautious and very intentional in examining the policies of all politicians in regard to black people and issues that affect us, but especially black politicians. Because we've seen this before. We've seen it. The Democratic Party pushing out a black politician to deliver them the black vote. And then that black politician doesn't do anything for black people and actually causes more harm to black people. Gets the Democratic Party in the White House, so the DNC wins. But the black people like you and me, we don't win. We don't get anything. So, yeah, a lot of black people are very attuned and much more aware of the fact that the Democratic Party, a lot of politicians in that party do underestimate the intelligence of black voters. That's the racist strain in this narrative, from our perspective, that Kamala Harris's campaign was undone by racism, and this Kamala Harris is a cop, Kamala is a cop narrative is racist. The idea that people think that we are not intelligent enough to criticize and critique, validly criticize and validly critique policies, not whether a politician is black enough, not their ethnicity, like Jimmy Dore and that woman did on his show the other day. That was some garbage. To have Jimmy Dore, I know some of y'all love yourself some Jimmy Dore, but I've had an issue with Jimmy Dore for a while. He has some woman on his show, and these 2 white people are sitting on his show talking about Kamala Harris is not an African American because her parents are, her father is from Jamaica and her mother is from India. So what would she have been the first African? But way out of line. Now that's racist. That was some racist garbage. That's the kind of racist garbage that white progressives need to shut up on. Y'all stop talking about whether we black enough or not. We don't need you to validate our pedigree. We don't need that from you. That's not welcome. Don't do it again. But when black people have valid critiques of the policies of black politicians, and when we can show that those policies have hurt black people, and we back up off that politician like, yeah, I don't think you'd be good on a national level because you sucked on a state level for our people. Why should we trust you with all of our people in this country on a national level. That's valid criticism. That's not racism. And the fact that people believe that we're not intelligent enough to make those critiques and be fair and be balanced, but to be honest and to do it with our own self-interest at heart, that's insulting. That's really insulting. Like, we don't have a right to do that. Farmers can critique politicians based on their farm policies. White women can critique politicians based on their policies in regard to equal pay for women, in regard to our reproductive rights, in regard to maternal leave, anything that white women believe is important to them. Immigrants can critique politicians on policies that have to do with immigration, and that's all fine. The LGBTQIA community can critique politicians on issues that relate to and important to them, and those things are great. They should. Everybody should. Politics is personal. Everybody has some skin in the game for who you vote for. Everybody does. But black people seem to be the only group of people where all politicians tell us to just shut up and vote for the person that we are telling you is best for you. And the minute we buck against that, and I use that word intentionally, the minute we buck against that and say, no, I demand answers for this politician doing this, and a third, that, this over here, what the heck was this? Explain that. That's a problem. Why did you do that? Oh, then all of a sudden, we're being too harsh and too critical. And then when the politician can't hold up to the scrutiny that they deserve, because all politicians deserve that scrutiny, you don't get my vote just because you're black. This is not a beauty pageant, y'all. This is not a talent contest. This isn't a chili cook-off. This isn't a bake sale. You're not getting my vote because of a popularity contest because you can sing Al Green. You done duped us with that before. You know we're not falling for that again. Fool us once, shame on us. No. I just did a George Bush. Ugh. Not falling for the okie doke again. So, we've got Democratic politicians who underestimate our intelligence. Then you've got candidates who come out here and believe that they can, prop up this symbolism, the hot sauce and the greens and I smoked pot in college and, I listened to Tupac when he hadn't put any music out yet when I was in college, when I was in grad school. And they think that that's going to win us over. That's racist. That's insulting. The fact that somebody on her campaign didn't have sense enough to tell her, stop doing that, because that pissed black people off last time. I mean, that nobody told this woman, stop, don't take that picture with the hot sauce at Sylvia's, because that really pissed black people off when Hillary did it. Don't go on the Breakfast Club talking about hot sauce in your purse. Because black people really couldn't stand that when Hillary did it. They dragged her all across the internet. Don't do it. Nobody on her campaign. Nobody in the DNC. None of her friends, none of her family. And for black voters, we're not interested. A lot more of us, our numbers are growing. We are becoming more aware. More of us are. We're not concerned about how black you is. I meant what I said. We are completely not concerned about how black you are. We're concerned about how just you are. For people like me, I'm honestly concerned about how revolutionary you are. I'm concerned about how anti-imperialist you are. I'm concerned about how anti-war you are. I'm concerned about how expanding the social safety net you are. I'm concerned about how anti-police union corruption you are. I'm concerned about how anti-neoliberal you are. I couldn't care less how black you are. That's not going to get my vote. That's not going to get votes of millions of black people. And for Democratic politicians, that is a strategy. Overthrowing democratically elected governments in brown countries' policies. If they think that that is what's going to get black people to vote for them, just putting a black face on all of that destruction, no. That's what was racist. Then, I mean, when we talk about Kamala Harris's campaign, let's talk about her campaign and how it turns out how terribly run her campaign was. I honestly, so hope this comes up here. This is an article in Salon, and I'm sure you can find it in a bunch of other places. There it goes. So, talking about Kamala Harris's campaign. Now, this article in Salon, and I know it's other places, says a newly released letter accuses Kamala Harris's campaign of treating its staffers, quote, poorly, end quote. She didn't treat, according to this letter that was released by this campaign staffer who was resigned, it was a resignation letter. This woman didn't treat her staffers poorly. She abused them. All right, so this resignation letter written by Kelly Mellenbacher, who at the time was a staffer for Kamala Harris, blasted the campaign for laying off aides with no notice and said, quote, "This is my third presidential campaign, and I have never seen an organization treat its staff so poorly." Let's see. Let me go down to, she says, the treatment of our staff over the last 2 weeks was the final straw in this very difficult decision, her decision to resign from the campaign. She cited a specific example, the fact that staffers were encouraged to move from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, only to be laid off with no notice and without thoughtful consideration of the personal consequences to them or the consequences that their absence would have on the remaining staff. So you make people move, excuse me, from one city to another, and then you lay them off with no notice. Did the campaign pay for them to move? Was the move, I mean, did they pay for the move out of their own pockets? And then these people move thinking they're going to have a job, and then they don't. Just out of nowhere. Let's see. One of Harris's many problems was that many of her advisors said that she's been unable to make up her mind about whether to go on the offensive against her rivals, as well as to decide whether she should side with the liberals or moderates in the Democratic Party's ongoing ideological feud. I'm going to go back to that in a second. This article mentioned Harris's record in the debate where Gabbard went after Harris. I mean, if people celebrated Kamala Harris going after Joe Biden, and people did because she was right to do so, then how can you criticize Tulsi Gabbard for doing the same thing to Kamala Harris, which she was also right to do? That's what primary is for. Kamala Harris didn't respond well to Gabbard's challenge at that debate. She didn't respond well in the days after. She backtracked on some of her answers. She's backtracked on whether she supports Medicare for all or not. She has not given a clear answer about much of anything about her policies, about her record, or a lot of her policies that people challenge. So that's a real problem. But let me go back back to this right here. She couldn't decide whether she should side with the liberals or the moderates in the Democratic Party. Listen, if you have a significant and growing voter bloc that is pushing for progressive policies, and you are sitting there not even able to make up your mind whether you are able to side with the liberals or the moderates, then that means you are completely ignoring this growing voter bloc that is demanding people-focused policies. You're just ignoring them. You're just going to ignore the progressives, and you think your decision is whether you should be liberal or whether you should be moderate. Guess what? Liberal and moderate are the same thing. Progressives know that. That's the kind of stuff that sank Kamala Harris's campaign. Not people being racist because they said Kamala Harris is a cop. Not being sexist because people are criticizing the way she treated people on her campaign. Because there are also reports that her a high-ranking staffer was her sister that nobody could criticize. Listen, I love my husband, but there are some things that you just shouldn't have family involved in. You can't do business with family. You need to have an outside somebody who your family member can answer to, who can criticize your family member, because it's always going to be awkward and weird when you do it. That's one of the oldest rules in business. Don't do business with your family. Don't have your family running your political campaign. Don't have your family managing you in entertainment. How many stories have we seen of family members mismanaging their family members' entertainment acts, singing acts, actors and actresses? You can't have your family running your campaign and then tell your campaign staff, don't question her, she my sister. What kind of garbage is that? So there were serious problems with the way she ran her campaign. She did not respond to her record well. She couldn't defend it anyway, but she couldn't. She didn't even try to respond to her record better than she did. She was trying to appeal to the wing of the Democratic Party that this quickly growing progressive groundswell really wants to get rid of. She backtracked on key issues like Medicare for all, some parts of her criminal justice reform platform were really ridiculous. The student loan debt forgiveness program of hers was just the most capitalist thing I had seen in a while. You could get your federal student loans forgiven if you start a business and it's successful for 3 years and it's profitable for 3 years. Well, if I can start a business and it's profitable for 3 years, why do I need you to pay off my student loans? But if I have student loans, what money do I have if I can't afford to pay my student loans off? What money am I going to have to start a business? Is that kind of like common sense stuff that people were asking about Kamala Harris's policies that these folks are now saying, oh, it was racist to criticize her policies. No, that's how regular people think. And when you understand that even though she's a black woman, Kamala Harris is also living in this rich people's bubble, so that her ideas, her proposals to answer the problems of the little people make no sense. Kamala Harris is not a part of the 99%. She's not a working person. She doesn't work for a paycheck that she can barely cover all of her expenses with. She has donors. She has backers. She has contributors. We have paychecks. I mean, some folks like me and my husband, okay, we have a Patreon account and y'all are our patrons. We have a few supporters, but y'all broke too. So we really appreciate your support. But Kamala Harris doesn't know what it's like to work for a living and barely have enough money to pay all your bills and your rent and your mortgage and eat and have to pay your student loans too, which is why they're about to default. She doesn't know anything about that. She doesn't know what it costs to start a business. She doesn't know what it takes to run a business and be successful in business. The fact that most businesses, all of them, over half of the businesses that are started in this country every year fail. So, I mean, just starting a business and being successful for 3 years, oh, that's easy to write down on paper, but it is really not easy to do. And to make that a criteria to get your student loans forgiven is just, it's the most capitalist rich people thing I've seen in a while. Aside from Bloomberg saying the other day, it's just too much silliness from rich people in this campaign right now. It's so much rich people ridiculousness. But you know what? We need to see it. We need to see this kind of stuff about these misplaced arguments defending bad black politicians. We need to see this kind of stuff because we need to have these conversations about why black people are allowed to have a right to we gon' do it and you ain't gonna stop us, critique all politicians and particularly black politicians to see how they have treated black people. It's important to us. It's just as important as farm policy is to farmers. It's just as important as LGBTQIA and gender policy is to other gendered people. It's just as important as immigration policy is to immigrants. It's just as important as every other policy is to every other group of people that makes politics personal. We have a right to do that. And when we looked at Kamala Harris's policies in California, we saw a window into what her presidency would be like, and we didn't want it. It really is just that simple. That wasn't racist. That was, you want to talk about pragmatic? That's pragmatic. That's practical. That's responsible, being a responsible voter. And let me tell you what I think as I close this hour. I hope you guys were able to learn a few things. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Here's what I think happened. Here's the other thing I think happened. Now, I have no proof of this. I have no evidence that this is what happened. This is just my gut feeling. I think that the powers that be in the DNC crunched the numbers. They did their backdoor magic. They talked to some people in California. They probably did some private polling because they do that, you know. They do polls that they don't release to us that let them know who they should be backing over other candidates, who they're going to pour more, whose campaign they're going to pour more money into, and whose campaign they're going to starve of funds. And Kamala Harris's campaign was one of those campaigns that they decided not only were they going to starve her campaign of funds, they weren't going to have her stay in the race at all. You want to know why? I believe because they did some private polling and they saw that Kamala Harris would not be able to win California. That's what I think. I think Kamala Harris wasn't going to win her own state. And the Democratic Party, the powers that be in the DNC said, look, we're not having this embarrassment again. So no, we're not going to back your campaign anymore. Her major financial backers were already pulling back because they saw her poll numbers falling off a cliff. So I think they already saw the writing on the wall that she wasn't going to be able to go the distance, not because she faced extra hurdles as a black woman, but because she did not perform well in defending her record and in the debates. She was great on the offense against Biden. She was terrible on defense of her own record. And I do believe that the DNC looked and saw that she probably wasn't going to win California, and they weren't gonna continue to invest in her campaign. That is the blood sport of politics, y'all. That's the part of this story I think these people who are, trotting out this narrative of, oh, Kamala Harris was the racist narrative that killed Kamala Harris's campaign dead. No, there wasn't. There was no racist narrative that killed her campaign. The strategy that the DNC decided to use with Kamala Harris as presenting her as the black women voter messiah, that I think was racist. Luqman Nation thinks that was racist, and ultimately, and it was a failed strategy. It was a disaster of a strategy, and I wish the DNC would never do that again. I wish that's a strategy they would abandon, but they won't because they're the DNC, and they don't listen to us because we don't have any money. But also the DNC knew that her campaign wasn't going to survive her own state. And that was an embarrassment that they were not going to abide, and it was an investment they were going to continue to make. So, listen, we got a lot of time, a lot of campaigning, a lot more debates. Oh my God. So many more debates. So many more candidates to parse through their BS. Put your hip boots on, y'all. It's bad. You got Pete Buttigieg out there pandering to black people at the Poor People's Campaign, Reverend William Barber's church. You got Joe Biden out there making a speech about his legs getting white in the sun and his hair turning blonde and sticking his legs in the water, and the little black children in the pool brushing his hair down and washing it, watching his hairs rise back up in the water, and then saying, that's how I learned about cockroaches, and I learned about children. You got Joe Biden putting his foot in his mouth all the time, saying all kinds of wacky, crazy white man Joe Biden, go somewhere and sit down stuff. Whoo, you got PBS now completely ignoring Bernie Sanders' campaign. Oh, brother. You got Deval Patrick getting into the race because, we absolutely need another black man to finger point, to finger wag at black people and tell us to be humble. And that's how we're going to succeed. We need that. Oh, brother. There's not enough time. There's not any more time tonight to talk about the rest of this stuff. That's for sure. So let me really quick, before I leave, before I shut all this down, let me go over to YouTube and Facebook and see what our friends are saying. If it will let me get over here. Let's see. Are you going to let me? Google Chrome is not responding. It doesn't want to play with me. So let me see what I can do. Uh-oh. I hope Mr. Luqman is in the chat room, at least on Facebook. I see all these people who have waved. Hey, Rich Namoan. Rich Namoan is on Facebook and on the watch party. Kenda Rupp, Bobby Lynch. What's going on, y'all? Mary Guzman, Ken Thomas, Pete Perry. Pete! Hey, baby. Jessica. Hey, Jess. Y'all are on the watch party. You appreciate it. I don't see any comments. Google Chrome is still acting a fool over here, so I can't get to the comments on YouTube. I apologize, folks. Oh, here we go. I got some comments here on OBS, and Google Chrome are doing some really wacky things right now. I got some comments over here on the watch party on Facebook. Oh, Robert Hughes said that Kamala Harris hired Hillary Clinton people. That was her first mistake. I did not realize that. Thank you. Thank you for telling. I don't know. Okay. Um, Heather Morris says, sounds like Republicans telling you to take it out of your 401k. Yeah, Kamala Harris's student loan forgiveness plan does sound like, who is it? I think it's Paul Ryan who introduced a 401k, a student loan forgiveness plan that literally is, you can take it out of your 4, to pay your student loan out of your 401k. These people are ridiculous. Catherine Tokarska says, Californian here. No way I would vote for her. I'd vote for Nina Turner? Tina? I think you mean Nina Turner, I hope. Pete B and Mackenzie, what's going on there? Oh, Heather, I'm so glad you said that. I think next Sunday we might look into that Pete Buttigieg and the Mackenzie story. I think that's pretty interesting. All right, so Google Chrome still is not up. I cannot get to the YouTube comments. I'm sorry, fam on YouTube, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. If you have enjoyed this video, share it all over the place. If you like what Luqman Nation does, if you would like to continue to keep supporting us, we really would love to continue to have your support. Consider becoming a patron. Oh, hey, now YouTube is up. Now when I'm doing my wrap-up pitch, doggone it. Because consider becoming a patron through Patreon. You can find us on Patreon under Luqman Nation, Luqman Nation. I forgot how to spell just a minute because I really want some cookies and ice cream right now. And you can also, if you can't do monthly contributions of $3, $5, or $7, that's all we're asking of our patrons. You can do a one-time contribution to Luqman Nation through PayPal. You can find us on PayPal under Luqman Nation. Excuse me, real quick over here on YouTube. Oh, somebody's got a question. Vice Admiral Strawberry. That is the coolest name right now. Vice Admiral Strawberry asked, do you think Biden's black support will fall off? Watching footage of him talk about the crime bill in 94 is so racist. It's crazy. I do believe his black support will fall off some, but I think some Democratic black voters are so convinced, they're so brainwashed into this vote blue no matter who to get rid of Trump. So many voters in general, and in particular, so many diehard Democratic black voters have bought into the Trump terror that, we have to get rid of Trump and then everything will be all right. I think he will still maintain a sizable black support. I think, though, that we have to keep in mind that the black support of Joe Biden, it's not because people know what his policies are, because if people did know what his policies are, nobody would support that man. The black support of Joe Biden comes largely from his tenure as Barack Obama's vice president. That's where that comes into. And that's a whole nother discussion that we honestly do not have time for. But listen, y'all, again, tomorrow, I will be co-hosting By Any Means Necessary on Sputnik Radio with Sean Blackman, the best voice in radio. That brother really does have the best voice in radio. And with the coolest producer, Bob Schlehuber. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a great new exciting venture for us. 105.5 FM in the Washington area, 1390 AM. I incorrectly said 1380 the other day. It's 1390 AM in the Washington, D.C. area. You can listen live on SputnikNews.com or on Sputnik's Facebook page. You can watch live from 3 to 4 p.m. on By Any Means Necessary Facebook page and on Sputnik's Facebook page. I will continue to do segments for the Real News Network, so continue to look out for them. And Luqman Nation will continue to come to you at 7 p.m. on Sunday evenings, bringing you truth, which is the only currency in Luqman Nation. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your support. And as always, be very good to each other. Peace, if you're willing to fight for it.